Thanks again for joining us this week. I just want to reiterate that we've just moved to the new pricing model. And so I'm just looking in the room here, and it looks like pretty much everyone here is either a customer already, or yeah, it looks like just about everybody, except maybe one or two names I don't recognize. But anyways, it's glad to see you. It's good to see you guys all back. I must apologize first. Last week's webinar, I had some internet connection issues, and I was recording it, and so unfortunately I missed most of the recording just until they could get the internet resolved around our office here. And so unfortunately that means we won't be able to post last week's webinar up. But I guess that's not so bad. We've been able to post just about every single one except for last week's, which was mostly a Q&A session. And as always, if you have any questions and whatnot, just, they take priority over whatever we got planned for today. We're sort of nearing the feature completion of version 1.1, and if I'm looking for some people that are, I've got a handful of people that are interested in checking out 1.1, which has got the new function nodes, which I presented a couple weeks back, or I think it's probably a month back by now. But if you're interested in checking it out, just shoot me an email or just put a supporting query, and I'll put you on the list. And it should be within probably this week, depending on how the sort of bug hunt that we've got going on here. Like, we're done most of the features here, done all the features that we want to put in for 1.1, but we want to just sort of get it to a point where it's there aren't any kind of showstopper bugs in there. And then we're going to just kind of hold a private alpha test. I know some of you guys are really clamoring to get a hold of this version here, because there's some stuff in the function nodes that you're looking for that you need. I apologize for the delay, but again, we want to sort of just release junk that doesn't quite work. So that's not really what we do. So we want to just make sure and take the time and get everything right, even just for an alpha test, and in terms of an actual release for 1.1, it'll obviously depend on how the alpha and then finally the beta test, the public beta test that we do, how it goes. And I imagine, of course, with an army of users trying it out, we'll probably find a lot of stuff that we weren't able to find ourselves, that we have to fix before we actually call it a full release. Again, with the new licensing model, everybody that has bought BloodHound will automatically get any update coming in the future. Doesn't matter what version it is, version 1.1, version 2, whatever it is we release. So you're all entitled to download it and check it out. Just be aware that if we give you a beta version, that the file format is subject to change, and so we don't recommend you ever use a beta version for production or actual trading. And the reason being is when the final full release is actually out, you may not actually be able to load your beta files because the file format could have changed. That's just something that goes with, I guess, running a beta. But just beware, the whole point of a beta test is just to try it out and provide feedback to developers and hopefully uncover bugs and whatnot, and have them iron out before we call it a full release. Oh, Gary, okay, so you're asking if there's a divergence function. No, we didn't actually get divergence in for 1.1. Divergence is a fairly major feature, I should say. And that one's going to be, that one's on the list for a future version, but not 1.1. 1.1 was mostly focused on function nodes, just sort of increasing the functionality of the logic template. It is possible to actually create some sort of, divergence as well. Before I back up here, but divergence can mean different things to different people. And in terms of, with computers, you've got to be really specific. I've seen divergences, different definitions of divergences, and there's certain, it's how to describe it, but there's certain conditions that some people allow that other people don't, and I'm saying it's sort of, for us to make sure that we get it right, we've got to make sure that we make it kind of a general enough tool that it addresses everybody's, or I can't say, I don't think we can ever get everybody's, but we can get maybe 80% or 90% of what everybody's looking for in a divergence tool. I wouldn't be surprised though, like, off the top of my head, I haven't really thought about this in depth, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's possible to do a lot of divergence type testing using the function nodes and playing around with that, because ultimately, it's just, we're just calculating values here, and divergence is just another derivative of some calculations, inputs that come in. So it's in theory possible, but it's, the function nodes are kind of more building blocks, I guess you could say, rather than full-blown divergence tools. Anyway, I'm sort of digressing here, but something that's kind of on my mind, and has actually been on my mind since the very beginning of BloodHound, when we first were designing this, and I'm talking like 2 years ago, is this notion of what we call like pattern recognition, or searching, looking at charts in like a very visual way. That's one thing I noticed when I was watching expert traders, is they look at the they look at the shapes. I guess the term is price action. They're looking at the chart and how it's forming, and they're looking at lengths of swings and shapes of swings, and deriving strategies based off that. And so and this is only on the drawing board. It's like literally only on a paper napkin type thing, because this is, I guess, what I could consider a very advanced feature. But it'd be nice to have one day the ability to look at the chart, like have BloodHound look at the chart and decipher it through patterns, and recognize basically a pattern recognition engine is what I'm talking about, and you be able to input in some form or another. I want a long leg that goes down, a short leg that goes up, and then a long leg that goes down again, and call that a whatever pattern, and I want to look for that. And with some sort of grading scale or whatever. I'm not exactly sure how that all worked, but that's sort of taking it to the next level. That we're getting the realm of AI and pattern recognition. But that's stuff that is out there in other industries. Pattern recognition is certainly prevalent in the medical industry and what they call computer imagery and that sort of thing, and it's just kind of an emerging field, and there's no reason why that can't be applied somehow to trading. So that's kind of a very, very far long-term vision, but price patterns and pattern recognition, that what I guess when this is a very long way around with me saying, I mean, I could there's sort of two ways we could go about this. We can create a divergence tool that just looks for divergence, or we can try to create a tool that looks for patterns in general, and have that pattern recognition tool able to spot divergence as well. So there's a couple ways we could sort of skin the cat, and more likely we might actually end up doing something like maybe both, and having BloodHound have the capability of looking specifically divergence, and then eventually maybe further down the road looking for generalized patterns. So that's kind of like that's brewing in our kind of I guess you could say our idea bucket, but that's kind of where we're going with this eventually. And divergence is obviously something that a lot of people have been asking us for, and I think it'd be foolish of us not to address it in some way. So that's kind of what we're looking for. Yeah, and actually, the key term is, and sort of just keep belaboring this, but the key term is market conditions. We're finding that traders behave differently under different market conditions, and one of the biggest challenges that people have when trading is first determining what kind of market condition they're trading in. You know, be it some sort of very choppy market, or maybe a very swingy market with large swings, you know, or maybe a highly trending market. You know, and these are all things that you can use indicators to measure stuff, but honestly, the best way is, like, you notice, like, just the human eye, right? If you look at a chart, you can almost immediately say, oh, that's obviously a swing market, but your indicators maybe, you know, sometimes disagreeing with that because they're lagging, or they need to take a while to catch up, or, you know, just maybe the criteria you've put onto the indicators, you know, like, haven't quite detected that it's a swinging market yet, but you can clearly see with your own eyes that it is. You know, and so that's kind of the fallback of indicators in general, is that they're just kind of a, it's almost like, if you think about that riddle, where you had three blind, or you had a blind man, a deaf man, or whatever. They're trying to, they're all touching the elephant, and they're trying to find what the elephant is, but they only have, you know, a small sense of it, or they only see a small part of the elephant, so they all think it's something different, but they're all actually, you know, they're all touching an elephant. They just don't know it's an elephant because, you know, you touch the foot of the elephant, and they think it's a tree trunk. It's the same kind of idea with indicators sometimes, right? The indicators are sometimes just a very simplified view of what's actually going on. And you can see this chart data is full of patterns and whatnot, but the indicators can't pick that up. You know, so the long-term goal of BloodHound is to sort of take it to that next level, and I think when we get to that level, you know, we'll be really ahead of the pack here in terms of giving you guys an advantage when trading. So anyway, that is three blind men feeling different parts of the elephant. Thanks, Randy. Yeah, that's what I was trying to get at. Three blind men each touching different parts of the elephant. Sometimes that's kind of what the indicators are like. So anyway, today we were planning on going on with the, we haven't really covered much, like we covered all the solvers, but what we, and you guys are, you know, I'm looking at the audience here, and you guys are a fairly experienced crowd here by the looks of it. You're probably all really familiar already with the AND and OR nodes. Those are fairly simple. Those are logic nodes. But what we really haven't covered in depth, and Zach, you might go over the AND and OR nodes too, just for the heck of it, for the benefit of new people. But what we really haven't covered is the ratio and the additive nodes, and those are kind of mysterious for some, but really they're quite powerful. You can do quite a lot with them. So anyway. Let's pass over to Zach and have him take it from there. All right, so let me just pass the mic over to Zach here.
Hi guys, good morning, and just give us a second here to get my screen projecting. And there we go. All right. Yeah, so as Jeremy said, I'm going to be covering the two more elusive logic nodes, the additive node and the ratio node. So, but first, let me kind of let's see if there's any. It looks like there's a few new people in here. So let me just kind of introduce a few things to a couple of new people in the room. So I do have a Skype account for Shark Indicators. If you do by chance see me online here on this account, that means I'm available for, you know, instant chat, you know, instant support. You know, if we need to, we can open up a GoToMeeting session and address your question. So so feel free to add me to your Skype account here if you'd like. So it's Zach White SI is the account name. So Zach White and SI is for Shark Indicators. And second thing I'd like to show you is I put together a tutorial video, and Jeremy did a good job of making me look good. So he took quite a bit of time to edit this video, make it nice. So down here, let me scroll back up here. So this is in the video tutorial section. So to get here, you can go to BloodHound, go down to Learn BloodHound, and it's in the video tutorial section right here. So we also have a tips and tricks section, and then the recorded workshops, like today's workshop and the previous workshops. The recordings would be in this section here. All right, so the tutorials are just to help get you going on BloodHound, teach you some of the basics. The tips and tricks are for some miscellaneous items, maybe some more advanced kind of conditions would show up in the tips and tricks. So basically, I guess like the tips and tricks so far has kind of come from questions that customers have asked us, and we felt that they would be good for everybody else. So so things like that would end up in tips and tricks. So, but here in the video tutorials, which I'm on the page right now, at the very bottom, there is a logic node tutorial here. So, in this one, I go through each of the logic nodes, right? So the and, the or, the additive, and the ratio node there. And today, I'll do the additive node and the ratio node. So, and some other resources to get some help. If you go down to support and go to the contact us page, there you can here you can submit your questions to us, and this creates a ticket that both Jeremy and I will see. So whichever one of us can get to you first, we'll do so. And another resource is the support center, which will take you to our Zendesk website. So this is where the support tickets go. And under the support forums, there's different sections here. So like the community help, general support. It's kind of like a frequently asked questions section. So a lot of commonly asked questions will end up in this section. And once again, there's another tips and tricks section that has some, let's see, I'll just use the support resistance here. So in the tips and tricks section, there's, these are basically kind of mini tutorials of common questions that we get asked a lot. And so I take screenshots and an explanation of how to create, how to create the original question that's being asked here. So you'll see the original question up on top, and then then I'll address the question with these screenshots and a little explanation. All right. And we also have a YouTube channel as well, where you can find all of our videos. So all of our videos are hosted by YouTube. And let's see, I see some comments or some questions coming in. Let me go through these before I get started here. Let's see. Thanks for the encouragement there, Randy. Dom's commenting, be careful what you wish for. Let's see. All right. Well, thanks, guys. Appreciate your support. All right. So back to the chart here. So I whipped out a quick little indicator last night. You can see it's giving a bar type output. And this is just to help visually illustrate, how the logic nodes are working. So you can see. So just kind of pretend like when this indicator has an output here, that this will be used as an input into BloodHound. And so when these things line up, we'll see how the different logic nodes react when a different number of these outputs all line up. So, and then also I just have a moving average here that I think I'll probably throw into the mix as well. So, all right, to first get started, I already have BloodHound on my chart here. All right, so to add BloodHound onto the chart, it's an indicator. So you just add it like you'd add any other indicator. All right, and BloodHound is down in the S's. It's under SI for shark indicators. So there's BloodHound, and you would just add it down to your chart, and it would show up down here. And then once you add it onto the chart, you'll see there's a button up here, and then there's a pull-down menu. So if you click on the button here, that opens up the BloodHound's interface, like so. If you click on File, you'll see it'll show your most recent BloodHound templates show up right here. If you need to see more, you can click on Open, and you can see all of them show up. Here is the list of solvers. These are what create all the different conditions that you can use within BloodHound. And then we have the Logic tab. And so this is what I'll be going over today, is the Logic tab. To get started, you have to click on the New button to start a new Logic tab. And, oops, what happened here? Oh, I don't have any solvers yet. So let me get some solvers going here. So with this type of indicator, this indicator you can see on the side here, it's either going to equal 0 or a 1 or a -1, exactly like BloodHound's output. So I just created it to be pretty simple and easy to use. So with this type of indicator on the subpanel below, typically something like that where you're looking for the indicator to be a certain value, then commonly you would use the threshold solver for that. So I'm gonna, let's see, I'm gonna add a bunch of threshold solvers on here, and I'm gonna get one started first, and then I can copy it and quickly change the settings I'm looking for. So, and commonly I will rename the solver to be the name of the indicators that I'm using within the solver. So I'm just going to call this test sig, and then I'm going to, let's see, test sig 2, and the 2 is going to be for the frequency. So you can see the top indicator here, it's giving us an output every 2 bars. The one below it's giving an output every 3 bars, and every 4 bars, and then every 5 bars at the one down here at the bottom. So let me go change this indicator. And let's see, it's called test signal generator. So, and let's see, I want this to signal every 2 bars. All right, and now I want to get a long output from BloodHound, from the long plots, and a short from the short plots. So I just need to change my checkbox here. All right. Next, I need to put my thresholds in. So we just had this question last night about using this threshold solver. So one thing that needs to be followed is how your values are inputted into the threshold sections here. So A needs to be the highest value, and E needs to be the lowest value. So in this case, the values that are coming out of my indicator are 1 and 0. So I'm going to put a 1 up here. I'm sorry, 1 and -1. And I'm going to put a -1 down here. So let me kind of give you an example. So I couldn't put 10 here, because the values need to start from highest and run down to the lowest. So if I put a higher value somewhere in the middle, the solver may work, but you'll get some really erratic kind of outputs from the solver, and it's not really going to function the way that you're expecting it to. So if you did need to look for a threshold value of 10, you'd need to put that up here and put your value of 1. You couldn't put it here because 0 is in between, or 0 is less than 1. So this would have to be 1, and then you could set this to 0. So this is how you could do it. So you'd start with the highest value, highest threshold value, and count down to the lowest threshold value. So let me just reset this back to the way I want it. All right. And then next, for the threshold value, you need to set your outputs, the output for the solver. All right. So I want a long output when the indicator is at 1, and I want a short output from this solver when the indicator is at -1. All right, so this guy's set up. So now let me put this on the logic board. Now you'll notice that there's no output today. So for those of you who are regulars, you're and already familiar with BloodHound, you're used to seeing this output change instantly as soon as you get this solver ready. But remember, I already had a logic tab started before I created the solver, so that's why there's no output. So the output, once you create a logic template, the output is dictated by what's plugged into this result node. And there's nothing plugged into it, so therefore there's no output. Now once I connect this up, there's our output. And we'll notice that BloodHound's output is lining up with the top indicator here. So every 2 bars, BloodHound is giving us an output, which is exactly what this one solver is doing. So, excuse me a second while I get some water. My voice is kind of horsey. So while I drink some water, what I'm going to do is copy this solver and set up a solver for the other 3 indicators down here on my chart with a frequency of 3, 4, and 5. So I'm going to change the name and then go and change the indicator's inputs. And this morning Jeremy was talking about some future ideas that we have, some future improvements. Just as a teaser. And Jeremy and I last week were just talking about conceptually how we can actually plot the indicators that you're using in BloodHound, how we can actually plot them on the chart so that we don't have to put the indicator on the chart and I guess set the indicator up in BloodHound. So another way of saying that is that once you've you're using an indicator in BloodHound, we believe we have a way that we can get that indicator to plot on your chart without having to add the indicator to the chart. It's just another, convenience thing. So, we're just another idea we're working on. All right, so I got each of my solvers on there. Let me just throw them on the logic board here. All right, so I can test each solver to make sure it's giving me the output I want just by plugging it directly into the result node. All right, so now I can see BloodHound is lining up with the second indicator down here. So, and this should be the third one down. There, we can see it's lining up. And the last one, there we go. All right. I might as well just cover some of these other ones real quick. Let me just throw the AND node in there. So if I got 2 and 3, you can see our output's only going to line up when the top indicator and the next one down line up. Right, so you can see how these two outputs line up. These two outputs line up, and BloodHound's output lines up. So now if I add a third one there, now you have to have all 3 indicators lining up with their output, like so. Here, this is just a coincidence that all 4 line up, but here we got all 3 lining up. And if I add the 4th one, now we have to have all 4 lining up, like so. All right. So the AND node requires, all of your solvers to be in agreement to give you an output. And here's another little tip of the day, tip of the workshop. You can convert these logic nodes to other logic nodes without having to add another one to the chart. So I can change this guy to an OR node by, you see the orange panel right here. I can click on that. A little menu pops up, and I can change it to an OR node. And bingo, it's instantly an OR node. Now you can see there's BloodHound's giving a lot more outputs here. Essentially, whenever one of these, oops, sorry about that. Cell phones these days, huh? Give me a moment to turn my cell phone off. Yeah, there we go. Airplane mode. Okay. All right. So as you can see, the only time BloodHound doesn't give an output is when there is no signal from any of the indicators. Let me stretch the bars out and make this a little more obvious and easier to see. So there we go. So none of the indicators are firing on these two bars, and so therefore there's no output. But all it takes is one of the indicators to fire, and BloodHound provides an output. So the OR node is just essentially, it's kind of like a pass-through. So it's a way of just linking all your solvers together, and allowing all the solvers to just pass right through it into one combined output. Okay. So next, let's look at the additive node. All right. Now the additive node, by default, it's going to look a lot like the OR node. And that's because the additive node is adding all these outputs together. And since so here's a couple of key things to understand about BloodHound. Right. So your output value, if I plug this straight in, the default output value of a solver is a 1 or a 0. Oops. Let me select on the right section here. Right. So in our output section, we told this solver to output a value of 1 or 0, depending on what the condition is. Right. So that's what we're seeing on the chart. Is it the output from BloodHound is either a 1 or a -1 or a 0, depending if the condition is met. So, and as you can see, BloodHound only ranges from 0 to 1 or 0 to -1. The BloodHound's output doesn't go above 1. So if these solvers are already providing an output of 1, then the additive node is just taking it's adding 1 plus 1 plus 1 plus 1, giving us 4. So so that's why when all these solvers are plugged in, it looks exactly like an OR node, because a value of 1 from each solver is coming in. They're getting added together, but the output, BloodHound's output only gives a maximum of 1. So that's I'm trying to rephrase this in another way, but I guess I hope you guys kind of get the point. Well, this changing the output value of each solver is really what needs to be done to use the additive node effectively. So let me move on to that part. Right. So if I click on the additive node, right, I have these sliders here, and I can start using these sliders to control the output value of each solver. Right. So right now each solver is outputting either 0 or 1, and I can use these sliders to change that, and that will make the additive node more useful. So so what I'm going to do is I'm going to change each of these solvers. Right, and you can see the names up here. So I got test signal 2, test signal 3, and test signal 4 and 5. So let me change all of these down to 0.25. Sometimes it's a little hard. I think my mouse sensitivity is a little too high, but you can stretch this out and it makes it a little easier. There we go. And oops. Okay, so they're all changed to 0.25. Now, if we look at the output, we can see. Here, let me. I'm gonna adjust the view here. I'm gonna stretch out BloodHound. There we go. So we can see now how the additive node is working. So when we have all four solvers lining up here, what BloodHound is doing is right now that within this additive node, each of the solvers coming in is now ranging from 0 to 0.25. And so the additive node is adding up each of these 0.25 values. Right? So we got 0.25 plus 0.25 equals 1. So all four of these total 1. And then we're getting a signal. And so as we look along the chart, we only have one indicator firing, so that's 0.25. One here is 0.25. Here we can see we have two of them. And so the output here is, let me just slide this over. We can look at the flags. So we can see the flag here is 0.5. Right, so the ratio node is adding these two solvers together for 0.5. And let's just keep moving along. Another 2, that's 0.5. Let's move along until I get 3. Here we go. Here's 3 indicators firing for 0.75. All right, so I think you guys kind of get the gist of how the additive node is working. So let me kind of show you another common use for this. So essentially this is kind of like if you could take your system and convert it to a point system where you're saying, okay, indicator A is worth 1 point, indicator A or indicator B is worth a point, and indicator C is worth 2 points. In other words, it has a higher importance, so it could be worth 2 points. And then indicator D could be worth a point, right? So you could get a total of 5 points using 4 indicators. Then you can use the additive node to say that, well, I need 4 points, 4 points out of the 5 possible points to take a trade. So that's probably the most common use for the additive node, is to somehow convert your system where you're saying so many indicators need to be doing such and such condition in order to take a trade. So if you got 10 indicators on your chart and you only need 8 out of the 10 indicators to meet their criteria, then 8 out of 10 is good enough to take the trade, and you could use the additive node to figure that out. So so what I can do is, let's see, so with these 4, so if I have, with these 4 that I've got here, if I only need 3 out of the 4, then what I could do is I could change their value to essentially a third, so that way when 3 of them are true, I'll get a signal. So when 3 out of the 4 meet their condition, I'll get a signal. So now, let's see here. And yeah, so here we go. So here is, right here on the right hand edge, I have 3 of the solvers true, and I got a signal out of that. And same right here. I only have to have 3. And I can see, let me just scroll the chart over. So when I have 2 of the solvers met, right? Remember their output value is 0.34, and we can see the output of BloodHound is 0.68. So it's just adding the two solvers together, totaling, 2/3 essentially. So let's say this indicator down here on the bottom has a higher importance. All right, so I could say it has, which would be this solver down here. I could say this solver has twice the importance. So if I click on the additive node, I can change its point value to double. There we go. And so now whenever this solver, whenever its conditions are met, it would only need one other solver in agreement with it to fire off a signal. Let's take a look on the chart here. Yep, so here we go. So this guy right here. All right, so this solver on the bottom its output is double that of the other three. So this solver, or this indicator, this solver only needs one other solver to provide you with a signal, just like so. And like right here. Or let's see if I can find a spot. Yeah, here we go. And then right here, move my arrow over. You can see right here we had to have three solvers, these three solvers which have less importance in alignment to get a signal. So simply put, the additive node is just adding up all the solvers. Right, let me kind of check through some of the questions and comments here. Well, it looks like Randy already watched the logic tutorial. Thanks, Randy. All right, let's see. Bob is making the comment here. It looks like the additive solver. Actually, it's not a solver, Bob. It's a node. So the just to get the terminology straight, the solvers are what look at the different conditions for an indicator, and the logic. These are logic nodes, and so when 1.1 comes out, it's going to have other nodes. It's going to have function nodes, whereas the solvers are looking at different, or actually looking at conditions. And so nodes are kind of like performing functions. So. All right, so Bob was saying it looks like the additive solver could be applied to the Mohan High 5 concept for market environment. Well, Bob, that's a new concept to me. I haven't heard of that one, but I think I'll do a Google search on it and read up on it. Sounds kind of interesting. So, all right. So next, I'll move on to the ratio node. So I'm just going to change this over to the ratio node. And before I do this, actually, I'm going to delete this whole logic tab and just kind of show you that essentially when you don't have a logic tab in use, when all you have are just solvers here, BloodHound's output effectively is in a ratio mode type output, right? So if we look at the output, right, so we have one indicator firing, right, and the output is 0.25. Next one indicator, the output's 0.25. Right, we have two indicators, so the output is 0.5. Now we're down to 0.25, only one. 0.5, we have two firing. Right, and here we have three, so it's 0.75. So without the use of a logic node, and you only have solvers on here, what BloodHound is defaulting to is the ratio node, and it's taking the number of solvers that you have enabled. They also have to be enabled too. So if I turn one of them off, let's see here. Let me go back on my chart. Okay, yeah, so we have three right here, right? So the output's 0.75. So if I turn one of them off, now you can see how the output changed to 1, because effectively I turned off the solver that's looking at this bottom indicator. So now we only have 3 solvers that are in use, right? Because this one is turned off. And so so in the ratio node mode, we have 3 solvers, so they're each worth a third, right? So 3/3 totals up to 1. And if I step through, right, so now you can see this one solver is now worth a third instead of a quarter. And so if I, oops, there we go. So if I turn this on, we can see the output drops to a quarter, because now there's 4 solvers that are being used. If I turn it back off, now the output is a third. So this default mode is in effect the ratio node, but you don't have all the power of the ratio node. I'll show you what some additional feature that the ratio node gives you, but you know, but essentially they're kind of operating the same. Let me turn this guy on, and let me give this guy a name here. Logic nodes. Yeah, drop the ratio node in there. All right, so the benefit of actually using a ratio node is you have the sliders. Right, so this is, you don't have the sliders when you're on the solver tab. Right, you can effectively change the output, you know, so I could change this to 0.5, and that would kind of do the same thing as what the sliders are doing, just not as convenient. All right, so on the logic tab, I have all these sliders here to control the output. Right. So, so let me find right here. I'm going to use this slot right here. So I have three of the indicators lining up, and once again, this guy on the bottom here that's firing every 5 bars. I'm going to change the importance of this solver down here. So let me slide my chart over. Oh, my arrow disappeared. Let me change that. Let's see, auto scale. Yeah. Okay. Okay. So what I'd like you to do is keep an eye on the value, on BloodHound's output value here as I adjust the slider. So the test signal 5 is what I'm going to adjust. And instead of the slider, actually I'm going to adjust the multiplier right here. So as I click on it, you can see the value on the flag here is increasing. All right. So it's multiplying the value coming out of that particular solver, therefore giving it more importance. And if I go high enough, it will fire a signal for us. There we go. So I had to get to 7. So I had to increase the importance of this one solver by 7-fold, or 700%. Yeah. So we can see even so, like on this bar right here. So on this bar right here, we slide over. So this one solver, its output now is 0.7, just for this one solver. And so then in combination with in combination with 2 other solvers, you'll get a signal now. So there is a mathematical formula on the website that shows the formula that's being used to calculate, how the ratios are figured. And that would be, let's see here, let me find where that is. So let me back up to, let's see. So it's going to be in the documents section of BloodHound's website. So alright, so if we go to BloodHound and go to documentation, and see on the right hand side here we can see documentation for everything. So here we go, we got the logic. So in the logic templates, we have the logic nodes here. Let's see, the ratio node. And yeah, there we go. So at the very bottom of the page is the formula that the ratio node uses. So just in case you guys are wondering, there it is.
Order filled.
All right. Oh, let me get this going. Just for fun, I like to have the Raven running in the background, and I'm just using some simple BloodHound template just to fire off some random trades. So, but I need to put the chart trader on the right account. So there we go. Now we can see it. Oh, look at that. They're both running at the same time. So this is running an ATM strategy right now. So if price moves down, you'll see the stop moving down to break even. And on this guy, if the price moves up towards the target, you'll see the stop moving up to break even. All right. So I think essentially that kind of covers it for the ratio node. They're not too complicated. So there is a subtle difference between the additive node and the ratio node. Once again, they're both good for kind of like point-based systems. Whereas I guess the additive node is a little more cut and dry, more digital-like because it's just simple addition. Whereas the ratio node, right, is using fractions, and it's more of an analog type method of giving a higher importance or a higher weighting to one of the solvers, or one of the conditions on a system that you're building. So let's see if there's any. I'm going to take a look, see if there's any comments here. Oh, thanks, Bob. So Bob sent Jeremy some paperwork on the Mohan High 5. So Bob asks a good question. Is the ratio node limited to 5 inputs? Bob, none of the nodes are limited to any inputs. Theoretically, each logic node can have as many inputs as essentially what Windows would allow, what the operating system's resources would allow, or whatever your CPU is capable of calculating, without slowing your whole system down. So no, not limited to 5. You could plug in 1,000 solvers into one ratio node. As long as your CPU can handle that many calculations, I'm certain that Windows would have the resources for that. So that was a good question, Bob. And so that's true for all the logic nodes. All the logic nodes, you can plug in as many solvers into the logic nodes as your processor can handle. Let's see. So Randy's making a comment. Ratio node is more of a weighted system than additive. Yes, exactly. Yeah. So think of the ratio node as more of an analog type system, whereas the additive node is more of a digital type system. But you really can get kind of crazy with things. So if I switch this over to the additive node, right, you still have sliders over here. So you can still, change the weighting of each of these solvers with the additive node, if you wanted to play around with that. Yeah, like for example, right, so test signal 5 is still has a multiplier of 7, and so let's see, let's see, the other ones are set to 1. Here, let me set these down to like a third. All right, so even though the slider is set to a third, but the multiplier is set to 7, we're still getting a signal on the test signal 5 solver, right, which is looking at this indicator right here, the indicator on the bottom. Otherwise, we're needing all 4, or actually no, we're needing 3. So we can see we're getting a signal here, right? So we have 3 of the solver, 3 of the conditions met, right? And with the solver set to a third, right, that totals up to 1. But then when this guy on the bottom here, which has a weighting of 7, right, we only need this guy. Well, actually, no, this one just alone. Just this one solver alone will fire off a signal because of its weighting, right? So you can get pretty crazy with you know, using these sliders and whatnot. So let me go through some other questions here. So Bob is asking, how about the additive node number of inputs? So I think I answered that for you, Bob. So yeah, the additive node, all the other logic nodes can have essentially as many inputs as your processor can handle. All right, thanks, Gary. All right, so Randy's asking, what is the hedge option for the selected node? All right, you know, it's probably better answered by Jeremy. I haven't gotten into the using the hedge feature, but essentially it's kind of adjusting the mathematics that the solver is doing. So there's some wording here to kind of help you understand it. So let's put it on not. Right, so the hedging mode on not, which is inverted, right? So it inverted the output. So we can see when there is no conditions here on our indicator, we're getting a signal. So it's just a pure inverted output. So that's a simple one to understand. Next, actually, you know what? Let me set this guy back to 1.
Hey Zach, I can sort of speak to that a little bit. Okay. Yeah, the hedging is it's a fuzzy logic term. It's just a way to sort of add modifiers to your criteria and represent it in some using computer math. For example, you know, say your criteria is strong, or say your criteria is kind of like having a good slope. Good slope in your definition may be positive for the long side and negative for the short side. And, you know, if you sort of think of it as like, okay, I want very good slope, then it's sort of like take that confidence value, that number that comes in, and you know, shrink it. So in other words, the slope has to be really, really good in your direction for it to pass kind of your litmus test or whatever. And that's what the vary does for you. So if you imagine, like, this only works, again, in the kind of BloodHounds if you're using fuzzy logic, being that, say, you're measuring slope, and say, I'm going to use slope as a simple example because it's easier to understand, but the idea is, like, say, the more positive your slope is, say, the higher your value in the long side towards 1 is. So say your slope is, I don't know, is, you know, 0.5 ticks or whatever per bar, which is considerably high. That's a fairly steep slope. I guess that would be 45 degrees technically. Actually, I can't really do the math in my head. But anyway, say that's that's what you want is sort of your goal. Then you would you use your slope solver and you would sort of map it again. Let's say you'd have like a range there. So 0.5 would be your top end, and then 0 would be your bottom end there. And as you've probably seen in previous videos, so if you have that slope mapping. So that the kind of the more positive is, the higher it is to 1, and the more negative is, the lower it is, the closer it is to 1 on the short side. And then if you add the vary hedge to it, it'll essentially squaring the value, squaring a fraction will shrink the number. So it's kind of like again to make it pass that threshold, the confidence value to be a strong value now. The slope has to be even more like pronounced. So you're again looking for very strong slope. Think of it that way, right? Versus if you use somewhat, it's kind of like it square roots the value. So in a fraction situation, that actually increases the confidence value. So it's kind of like making it more admissible, right? So you're looking at now. You're think of like you want slope that's just somewhat good. Okay, so it doesn't have to be too like that great, but you're good with just having it, just slightly positive, say, in the long side. So that's a very quick way to just adjust it and make it so that you're sort of admitting more through the gates, if you will. Like you're sort of lowering your bar, lowering your expectations of it. So I hope that sort of makes sense.
Jeremy, let me, I can show you, you can see the output is adjusting here, so if you want to kind of explain what's going on here, and you can look at the output, BloodHound's output here, so you can see I have each of the solvers set to a third, and so if I turn the hedging off, right, a third plus a third plus a third should be 0.99, and I'll turn these hedgings on, and if Jeremy, if you want to kind of reiterate to explain, so I'll turn the vary on, and you can see BloodHound's output change.
Yeah, so if you click vary, you notice how the basic confidence values start to shrink, right? Again, so you need more strength, if you will, on the input to drive a good output for you. And so you're basically you're raising the bar, you're raising your standard. Think of it that way. You're raising your exactly. You're raising the standard of what you're looking for to go through. And somewhat is the opposite. It's relaxing your criteria, relaxing your standard, and lowering your bar a little bit. And so everything goes through is pronounced. It's larger coming out.
You can see the output here changing. So let me turn, so I have the somewhat turned on. Now if I turn the somewhat off, see, look at these bars here. Let me, I'll mark them with an arrow. So watch as the output increases here on these two bars. So I'm going to use somewhat and see how the value increased. So it gave more strength. It gave more strength to just a single solver providing a single solver firing off. And you can even see, the output here changed from, so now it's 0.995. So it just gave a little extra edge, a little increase in the value here. So if I turn the somewhat off, right, the total output changed back to 0.99. And these two outputs right here went back to 0.33. So now if I use the vary, you can see the output here, BloodHound's output changed down to 0.98. And if you look at these two bars, it shrunk way down. Let's see what it shrunk down to. 0.1. So it took it from 0.33 down to 0.1. So the lower BloodHound's output value is, the more it affects the value. The closer that BloodHound's total output gets to 1, the less influence that the hedging has. All right. So we can see BloodHound's output here on the right is almost at 1, and so the influence of it is very little in comparison to these two bars over here, which only have one solver firing. So let me turn off. So I'll turn off the vary, and we'll see that these two outputs here go back to 0.33. So there's a lot more influence on this lower value than on this higher value of BloodHound. So now this total value is back to 0.99. So there you go. I hope that helps you guys out. And let's see, there's some other questions coming in here. All right, so Bob asked the question, say you have come up with a template using the ratio node and use it in a strategy. Can you then optimize the weights of the inputs? Well, it kind of depends on what you mean by optimization. If you're talking about the optimizer in the strategy analyzer, then no. This NinjaTrader strategy analyzer is very limited as to what you can optimize. But as far as optimizing in BloodHound, then yes. I mean that's the purpose of having these sliders, is that you can, if you are using a ratio node, you can quickly adjust these sliders and see what's going on in your chart in real time, to do a quick instant optimization as you're seeing, as you're watching the chart change, without having to run a backtest results, through the strategy analyzer, which takes time, right? You can't use the strategy analyzer in real time, but with BloodHound, the main advantage of BloodHound is that you can optimize your system in real time, just by adjusting whatever you want to adjust. So so there's kind of both sides of that question there, Bob. Let's see, Randy. Would the hedge be a quick check for different potential outputs before resetting all of the node settings permanently? I'm not sure I'm fully understanding your question there, Randy. Let's see, would the hedge be a quick check for different potential outputs? Different potential outputs. Randy, that question's a little too vague for me. I'm not sure what you're trying to get at. So sorry, I really can't give you an answer on that one. All right. Well, guys, it's almost 12 o'clock. So if anybody has any questions, I'd like to try and field some quick questions that you guys might have. Otherwise, I guess we'll kind of wrap it up there, and call it a morning. So And Jeremy, any last comments before we wrap this up?
No, I hope we covered these logic notes and your questions regarding them. So again, you can always just hit us up on support. And don't forget to email us if you want to be on the list to test out version 1.1.
People are going to ask me for this indicator, this little test signal indicator. Jeremy, I'm getting some feedback. And so I'll post this up on the website. Let's see. I'll post it. It'll show up in the download section. Let me bring the website up again. So if you click on BloodHound, learn BloodHound, and go to the download section, I'll post it in the download section, and also I'll post it with the training workshop video as well. So when this gets posted up there, there'll be a download button just below the video as well. So that way you guys can play around with this. All right. So, all right. Well, thank you guys. And see. Oh, hold on. See, Bob's making one last question or comment here. Oh, okay. Thanks, Bob. So Bob just sent me the high five thing, Magic 7 high five. So, all right, thank you guys. We'll call it a day. Bye-bye.